So Sean, do you know, did Sarah have more of a prepared presentation? I know we didn't ask for one. Welcome to the April 27th, 2023 electronic meeting of the Environmental Commission. This meeting is in accordance with executive orders from the governor to effect social distancing and mitigate the spread of the COVID-19 virus. We intend to conduct this meeting similarly to an in-person meeting. However, please be patient if there are technical issues. Public comment will be via telephone only. To speak during any of the public comment opportunities, please call 877-853-5247 or 312-626-6799 and enter meeting ID 922-9696-1644. Again, call 877-853-5247 and enter meeting ID 922-9696-1644. This information is also available on the published agenda in the public notices section of the city website and on the broadcast of this meeting on CTN channel 16, AT&T channel 99, and online at www.a2gov.org/watchctn. Single word. Okay, do you want to move on to Sean, could you read the land heritage statement and then the roll call?
Thanks, Steve. All right. Start off with the land heritage statement. I acknowledge that the land the city of Ann Arbor occupies is the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe, including Odawa, Ojibwe, and Badewadmi, and Wyandot peoples. I further acknowledge that our city stands, like almost all property in the United States, on lands obtained, generally in unconscionable ways, from indigenous peoples. The taking of this land was formalized by the Treaty of Detroit in 1807. Knowing where we live, work, study, and recreate does not change the past, but a thorough understanding of the ongoing consequences of this past can empower us in our work to create a future that supports human flourishing and justice for all individuals. Right.
Thank you.
Let me just make sure I've promoted everyone who should be a panelist. And all right, I will start the roll call. First, Councilmember Ackman.
Here, Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Chairperson Brown.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Commissioner Callawart.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Curtis.
Here, Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Commissioner Dale.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Councilmember Dish.
Here, Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Commissioner Gibb Randall.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Commissioner Graham. I think Commissioner Graham's sound was not working earlier, so don't see them on the line. He was on for a little bit. So.
Okay.
Commissioner Gruber.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Commissioner Marson.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Commissioner Mirsky.
Here at my home in Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Vice Chairperson Mitchell.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Commissioner Nedrich.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Commissioner Oriole. And Commissioner Wayhing.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Thank you. And that is a quorum.
Great. Thank you, Sean. So let's move on. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as submitted? John Callawart first, Dharma Ackman second. Any discussion? Any suggested amendments? Hearing and seeing none. All who approve the agenda as submitted, please raise your hand and say hello. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, it passes by unanimously. The next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of our March meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Shannon Gibb Randall and seconded by Lisa Dish. Any discussion? Raise your hand. No, I don't hear or see anything. So who approves the minutes as submitted by Sean? Raise your hand or say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? Okay, I hear and see none. So the minutes were approved unanimously as submitted. The next item on the agenda is public commentary. So this is an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes. Please call 1-888-788-0099. I'm not sure that's the right number here. Please call 877-853-5247 and enter meeting ID 922-99966. I'll start that over. Please call toll-free 877-853-5247 and enter meeting ID 922-9696-1644. This information is also displayed on the meeting agenda and video feed. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand one by one using the last 3 digits of your phone number. In order to electronically raise your hand to indicate your desire to speak, please press *9 on your phone. You will hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any television or background sounds so that we may hear you clearly. Please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments. and be patient. There can be up to 30 seconds before a connection is established. So do we have anybody online yet?
Yes, we do. I have a caller ending in number ending in 134. Again, that number ends in 134. I've allowed you to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds and Chair Brown. I'm Ken Garber. I live at 28 Haverhill Court. On the gas ban resolution, Ann Arbor's direct greenhouse gas emissions are rising fast due to new construction. 30 separate gas burning developments now underway or in advanced planning will put almost 24,000 metric tons CO2 equivalent emissions into the atmosphere each year for decades to come, dwarfing emission reductions from the city's 3 solar projects. Recently, the city approved 320 new gas burning apartments off Pontiac Trail and 78 new gas burning townhomes on Platte Road. It's constant, but few are paying attention. Reduced commuter emissions will offset only a fraction of the damage. The 820 plan relied on the state to enable cities to require most new buildings to be net zero energy, but that didn't happen, nor will it for several years to come. So we need to ban gas connections in new construction. We just can't keep locking in new emissions for decades going forward. That CO2, as you know, remains in the atmosphere for 200 years or more, heating the planet. There is no path to a livable climate if we don't end fossil fuel combustion. Banning gas in new construction should be the easy part, a no-brainer. We have proven and cost-effective alternatives. This should not be hard. Other parts of decarbonization of the transition will be, but not this. You may have heard that a 3-judge panel from the 9th Circuit Court of Appeals ruled against Berkeley's gas ban ordinance. This is obviously not good news, but it's important not to overstate its implications for Ann Arbor. First, Berkeley has signaled that it plans to appeal. Second, I spoke with a U of M environmental law professor who calls the decision legally faulty. Third, Berkeley's ordinance amended its building code. Ann Arbor, on the other hand, is proposing to amend its zoning code, and courts give much greater leeway to localities in general when it comes to zoning than it does for building codes. So our situation is somewhat different. Also, your resolution does allow for interim measures. Other cities are doing this. For example, Burlington, Vermont has implemented a carbon pollution impact fee starting at $150 per ton carbon for new construction with fossil fuel thermal energy systems, and also for renovations and expansions. We should look at something like this for Ann Arbor. Bottom line, the resolution you have before you tonight is sound. It's common sense. It's only a first step, but we need to take that before we do some of the harder things. So I urge you to pass it tonight with enthusiasm, and thank you for listening to my comments.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Garber. Anybody else on the line, Sean?
I do see one other caller on the line, but their hand is not raised. So I say give them a couple of seconds to see if they want to raise their hand. If not, we can move on.
Yep. Again, you need to press *9 on your phone.
All right, I am not seeing a hand raise.
Okay. Well, this ends the first period of public commentary. There will be another opportunity for persons to speak at the end of this meeting. So the next item on the agenda is unfinished business, which is the second reading of our resolution in support of accelerated action on an ordinance to ban natural gas connections in new construction and major renovations, and in support of devising and implementing interim measures to incentivize all electric construction. So let's see, do you want to put up the document, Sean? Can you share your screen and put up the document? Not the red line version, just put up the final version, the version that's.
All right, can everyone see that?
Yeah. So first, do I have a motion to consider this resolution? I don't see hands up. Dharma Ackman has her hand up. Brooks Curtis seconds. So let's proceed to the discussion. This will be the second reading. I don't think it's been significantly changed since the last reading. I think the whereas clauses are all straightforward and support the resolved clauses. So let's see. I could read it out. So Sean, why don't I read it out?
I do see a hand from Commissioner Marson.
Oh, okay. Commissioner Marson, you have the floor.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you wanted to read it. I just had a question about one of the clauses.
Sure.
The fourth from the bottom, whereas the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act provides substantial new financial incentives for electrification and heat pump installation. I was under the impression, maybe I'm incorrect, that was primarily for retrofitting existing buildings. And so I just wondered what the rationale was for including that clause in this resolution. But I might not really understand fully the that Inflation Reduction Act, the provision in there.
Okay, yeah. Commissioner Mursky, you have the floor.
There is something in the Inflation Reduction Act that addresses new construction. I believe it relates to part in the tax code called 45L. I can't tell you exactly what the incentives are, but there are incentives for new construction, as well as for retrofits, like you said.
Thanks.
Yeah, I have a vague memory of that. Any other questions about the whereas clauses? Okay, why don't we move down to the resolution clauses, and I will read those out. So there are two resolution clauses. The first one is, therefore be it resolved that the Ann Arbor Environmental Commission concurs with the Ann Arbor Energy Commission and urges the City Council to ask the City Administrator to work with the City Planning Commission to draft and pass, with the great urgency fitting a declared emergency, an ordinance banning natural gas connections with extremely limited exceptions for all new construction, as well as major renovations and additions for council's consideration. And the second resolved clause is, therefore be it resolved that the Ann Arbor Environmental Commission urges the City Council to ask the City Administrator and the City Planning Department Commission to draft and pass with equal urgency a set of recommended carrot and stick measures that City Council and the City Administration could implement. For example, the restructuring of fees, priority processing, and using greater discretion when providing incentives such as tax credits and helpful guidance in order to promote all electric, sustainable, healthy, reliable, and affordable construction, in addition to other measures, such as an updated State of Michigan Energy Code and Zero Code Appendix. So these are the actions that we're recommending to City Council. Are there any comments about these? Any concerns, questions? John Mursky, you have the floor.
It's my understanding that the Renters Commission also approved this about a week ago, last week.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense because in many communities, utility costs are now higher than housing costs. So this is always a question about rental housing. So let's see, Chris Graham, you have your hand up.
Well, hopefully you hear me.
Yes, we can hear you now.
And to reload Zoom. Okay, there have been some court cases out west, maybe Boulder, maybe somewhere in California, John or somebody, have you scoped those decisions to see whether there's a way around them here?
We had a public comment by Ken Garber. There's recently been another suit. The city of Eugene, Oregon has passed a natural gas ban that's being sued as well, where there's a lawsuit that's been filed. So John Mursky, you have your hand up. You have the floor.
Yes, Christopher, or Chris addressed the question to me. My understanding is the same as Ken's, so it's obviously of concern. Clearly, the laws in the two states and the methods were different than what is potentially possible here. I have not read it yet, but there's a lawyer on the Energy Commission, and he did a review of the decision and the situation in Berkeley, and it was his opinion that while it's not good news for Ann Arbor, it's not something that is something that would indicate that we have no pathway forward, even on the first resolve clause.
Okay.
Thanks. Commissioner Mitchell, you have your hand up.
Thank you. I just want to say that I strongly support moving forward with this resolution, which is advice to move forward for the city. We are in a climate emergency, and it's time that we take action that has some visible, tangible outcome. And I think that the one suggestion that we just heard from Mr. Arbor, who called in to consider a fee that addresses the emissions related to any installation that includes natural gas right now, is a way forward. It's not something that might feel good, but it's, on the other hand, we will be suffering the carbon emission output of any building that has these installations for years and years to come. This isn't a decision that would be for just now or any time that a building is completed. It will be something that is in existence for 30 years, 40 years, and we're talking about a timeline of 2030. So we need to take actions that we can be confident will start to address our goals. And we need to see solid measurements that show our progress on reducing emissions overall in the whole city, regardless. This is a small step forward, and I encourage us to move forward with it.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Mitchell. Are there any other comments or questions, concerns? I will just add at this juncture that I have several old friends that are prominent environmental attorneys with environmental law firms practices that I've been inquiring about their potential interest in providing pro bono work for the city in this regard. This has become a legal issue, obviously. And so I think if the city legal department would accept some pro bono assistance, that might help address some of their concerns about their budget and time. So I think this is something that could also be looked into. Should the challenges come. So let's see. Do I have a motion to consider a vote on this resolution? Bridget Gruber raised her, and then Lisa Dish, you have your hand up. You have the floor.
Thank you. I just wanted to say before we get to the vote that I will not be supporting this resolution. I think that there are some really good elements in it, and I share very much the sense of urgency and concern about climate change. But I'm a lot more put off by the Berkeley result, and because I have I can vote as a member of this commission. which is just an advisory vote, but I'm actually sitting on the body that we're advising. And as a member of the body that we're advising, I just can't see my way to putting the city in the kind of legal jeopardy that accelerating the gas ban ordinance would do. And as you all are aware, the city is currently also pursuing a path of renegotiating its heating franchise with DTE, which is something that the city has a clear right to do. And so back in February, when we weren't aware of that option, and the Berkeley case had not happened, I was more willing to say, you know, there are times when Ann Arbor should blaze trails and be the first, and, you know, okay, it lands us in court, not a problem. But I feel like that's more reckless in light of what I know today. So I'm not going to be voting in favor of this resolution, but I honestly understand that it's coming from a very good place for all those of you who have labored over it and are bringing it forward and will be supporting it tonight. And so that's just what I wanted to say. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Dish. Dharma Ackman, you have your hand up. You have the floor.
Thank you. I wanted to also extend my appreciation to the commissioners who worked on this, as well as the aims of the resolution. I, similar to Councilmember Dish, I won't be voting in favor of this tonight. I did want to say a few words just about kind of my perspective on, you know, what's driving this. So I'm fully on board with using electrification as the means to meet our climate action goals, and that we need to get fossil fuels out of our homes. As has been mentioned several times, we're in a climate emergency and we need to take action. And also, you know, I appreciated that the resolution made very clear we have the tools, you know, on the market today. We have the technology for heating our homes, heating our water, that are able to operate without gas and to do so with much higher efficiency, even in our Michigan climate. However, I don't think that creating an ordinance to ban natural gas is the best path forward at this time, primarily because I have serious concerns about the legal challenges, both at the state and the federal level, and also in light of the opportunity that I think that we have right now with respect to renegotiating our heating franchise. Those two things basically are what's informing my thinking. I did appreciate that this talked about incentives. I think that that is a direction that is definitely worth consideration. It's something that I've thought for a long time. So also appreciate that aspect, but will not be supporting this resolution tonight.
Commissioner Mirsky, you have the floor.
I would like to point out two things. First of all, the gas franchise does not expire until 2027. That does not mean that parties could not reach an agreement on a new franchise in advance of that date. But I think everybody should consider who we're negotiating with. Secondly, I would like to point out that there is a second resolve clause in this, and it doesn't rely entirely on the first resolve clause. And by anyone voting against this resolution, effectively, they're voting against both resolve clauses. Thank you. Councilwoman
Dish, you have your hand up. You have the floor.
We could split the resolution and vote separately on the resolved clauses. I would support the second resolve clauses if it didn't have stick but only had carrot in it. But I wouldn't vote for carrot and stick because I think that that's actually redundant to the first resolved clause, because the sticks would be regulatory things like a ban in an ordinance or a tax or a fee. So if people are interested in splitting the resolved clauses, there may be others who are interested in splitting them. And if anybody's open to taking out the stick, I would be happy to support the second resolve clause. And I understand that you don't have to rewrite this damn thing for me. You've worked really hard on it. and we can agree to disagree.
Commissioner Mursky, you have the floor.
I, for one, would be willing to split the two, just to make clear what the position of the various commissioners are. That means we could vote on both. I'm personally not in favor of removing stick, because it would essentially take off the table anything like what Mr. Garber mentioned. It would also take off the table any fee increases. And it would only then allow for incentives, and we know incentives often cost money, and we may not have money to do that. And also it would potentially take off other kinds of measures. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, well, I'll just say that I do think that the sticks, I don't have any problem with sticks remaining in there, because oftentimes that's what's required to get people to consider moving out of their habits, moving out of their habitual ways of doing business. Because when they see the sticks, then they'll become more attentive to the carrots as well. That's been my experience. Commissioner Mitchell, you have the floor, and then Commissioner Dale. We can't hear you.
Sorry. I'm generally not in favor of splitting and would prefer to have this be one single document. However, if we do a split, I want to make sure that we vote on each of them, not just one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, my understanding is I think it's a friendly amendment. So I think so. I'm willing to be contradicted, but I think it could be split. I'm happy with that myself. Commissioner Dale, you have your hand up. You have the floor.
I agree a split is better than having two of our commissioners just say no to it, right? So I think that would make sense. Maybe I'm just not understanding, but to me, taking the stick out, I think what I heard was that having the stick is redundant because of the first whereas. If we are doing them separately, it's not redundant, right? Because now you're saying, okay, so if you're saying no to the first, then the whereas or the stick is no longer redundant for the second one, right? Like, because you might be saying that you're okay with incentives and you're not talking about a full ban at all, right? So is it okay to have some sort of thing that's discouraging it? I mean, to me, that seems reasonable. So I'm in favor of the stick staying in.
Okay. Commissioner Mursky, and then Commissioner Dar, and then Council Member Ackerman, and then Commissioner Marson.
I would like to point out that the only stick is not a ban or is not severe restrictions. There's a multitude of possible sticks. And I would also add a stick could be that if a developer proposes a natural gas connected project, that be accompanied by a technical and financial evaluation. And so, that's not even necessarily a significant monetary stick. It's not a fee increase or anything else. So there's a variety of different carrots and sticks. And we're not in this resolution prescribing any carrots or sticks. We're simply suggesting that carrots and sticks be evaluated, and that we're not also even dictating what council and what a council resolution would look like. The council resolution is simply, this is advising council to take this action, and council could completely rewrite this based on our input. So I think we should take that into consideration. And in my view is we should leave the full palette of possibilities possibilities on the table for council as well as for city administration. That includes the legal office, that includes planning department, that includes the planning commission. Thank you.
Okay. Council Member Ackerman.
Yeah, I just wanted to say my understanding with respect to sticks is and its redundancy is that we're very limited in the sticks that we can apply. And I think that the sticks are kind of limited to the ban. So in that sense, I think it's redundant. Another way to look at, I think, carrots and sticks or incentives is, the status quo is the stick, not getting the incentive is the kind of thing that you're missing out on. So I would be in favor of splitting this, but again, I think the sticks I think it should come out and be focused on incentives.
Well, I think in some degree, the carrots and sticks are in the eye of the beholder. I think we could substitute language saying any and all mechanisms, such a, to encourage something like that. But carrots and sticks is, a traditional English phrase that I think anybody understands. Let's see. Did you want to? Okay. Commissioner Marson, you have the floor.
Yeah, just thought I'd weigh in here on the carrots and sticks thing. I think a ban is a ban, says nobody can do it. Carrots, you get a little benefit for doing something. Stick says you can still do the thing, but there's a penalty to pay. So to me, ban is not equivalent to stick. And I think even if sticks are limited, it's still worth exploring what they are.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Commissioner, Council Member Dish.
Yeah, I'll just I have a lot of concerns that any sort of fee or whatever we would want to impose for people who went ahead with gas I would want to hear about the legality of that before I did it. I agree with Councilmember Ackman that the stick is the status quo. We have heard from Doug Selby. I think, hasn't he spoken to us or has he just spoken to Planning Commission and Council, how utterly impenetrable the process is. He described his project, which is a wonderful passive, it's going to generate more energy than it uses, his house that he's putting in Ward 1. And he described that he felt that his project had been hung up by a full year, by our existing processes. So I think that there are a lot of things we can do for carrots, and I would be fine with the language of any and all measures to encourage electrification. That's fine with me. I'm not going to vote for sticks. So, and I understand the expression and I'm well aware of the difference between the two. But from what I am hearing from developers, including Jennifer Hall, who stands in the position of a developer with respect to 121 East Catherine, is that there's a lot that we can do to city procedure to improve things, and to do that for an electrified project would be a meaningful change. So I'm comfortable with moving forward with carrots, and I won't vote for sticks.
Okay, Commissioner Mitchell and then Commissioner Mursky.
I just want to say that when I first heard status quo, I thought that the stick part of that meant that we're continuing to have the carbon emissions. So it was important for me to hear that explanation. I just really feel that we are at an emergency, and I understand that there are others who are in a different position than me personally, but we are all going to feel the effects of the carbon emissions until we finally draw some kind of line. So I'm drawing my particular line here. So thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Mursky.
I would like to say that I appreciate Councilmember Dish's flexibility. I would just like to point out, I'm extremely familiar with Doug Selby's project. And I would just like to point out that the obstacles that he faced have nothing to do with the sustainability features of his project or the fact that it was natural gas connected or anything else. It had to do with the multiple layers of approvals. It had to do with feedback from city staff saying one thing and then a reversal at a later point in time. So it really, the obstacles that he faced and the 5-year timeline that he had really nothing, as I said, to do with sustainability features. And so we're not implying that we're adding additional sticks that would impede the kinds of projects that he has put forth and that Planning Commission and City Council have approved. And I would like to point out that about a week ago, I sent an email to Commissioner Gibrando in her role as head of the Planning Commission, outlining a list of about, 6 to 8 different possibilities of using the phrase carrots and sticks, broadly interpreted, as other commissioners have mentioned, what kinds of measures the city could potentially consider. I'm not advocating that the city implement sticks that are unreasonable or that would not hold up to legal challenge. And I think also that simply a consideration of carrots and sticks could lead to a brainstorming session that might lead to other avenues open to the city. So I think really, I don't care that much about what we vote and do. I certainly hope that what we do is see activity on the part of Planning Department, Planning Commission, City Council on these activities. That's my last comment. Thank you.
Okay. Any more comments on that topic? Because I'd like to bring up the negotiations with DTE as well. That was also mentioned earlier. I'm not sure. I agree with Commissioner Mirsky that 2027 is a long time in the future, considering we're targeting 2030 for carbon neutrality, and that these buildings will be there for and potentially be heated with gas for a long, long time. Is there any sense? I'm sure there are sensitivities about these negotiations. I'm not sure what the city has agreed to. Is there a non-disclosure agreement, formal non-disclosure agreement with DTE or anything like that that would inhibit any public communication over these negotiations until they've been finalized, until they're at a take it or leave it stage? I'm not sure if those, I haven't heard anything about that. But this concern was raised, so I'm just putting it out there that if we are negotiating with DT about an alternative non-gas heating, then and the deadline for that is 2027, then I would hope that there's some public engagement on this issue going forward over the next 4 years. Commissioner Ackman, Councilmember Ackman, you have your hand up, and then Commissioner Graham.
Yeah, no problem. I wanted to just comment on that. I think as Commissioner Mirsky said, 2027 doesn't mean that that's when it's actually going to be, when any negotiation is going to be finalized. That's just, we know that that's coming. So I don't think we should read that as this is going to take until then. Secondly, I did want to point out that, I'm not part of the, legal negotiations, and that's not, subject to discussion. However, I did want to say that there are public engagement sessions about this that were just announced, I believe, yesterday. And they're happening in May 11th and May 18th. I believe this was announced to the Office of Sustainability. So just wanted to let you all know since you asked.
Oh, thank you so much. Commissioner Graham.
I'm going to vote for the resolution in respect for its ideals, but I'm sure the council will do what it does. But there's a whole different avenue of, I guess, electrification or get the fossil fuels out of houses that perhaps we can get more traction from. I have a substantially gas-fueled house and one built in 1960, which isn't terribly well insulated. The quandary of, without a lot of time to recoup my investment, being in my 70s, sorting out how to proceed with diminishing the use of gas here is not something that's easy, and I'm cognizant about these issues. I understand engineering. I get it, but it's still complicated. And it seems to me that, again, without sticks, the city could have programs that help those who are inclined to do stuff more than we are. And in a gentle way, again, without sticks, it's less threatening and maybe more people will shift sooner. Maybe the net result is more than we might get from new buildings that aren't willing or that are willing to go forward all electric. Just my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you. Shannon, you have the floor.
I feel like if this is going to have any effect at all, that the planning staff has indicated to me through the planning manager that they are basically booked in terms of their capacity. And so in terms of what they see as the priorities, they got the comprehensive plan and all kinds of things happening. The only way, in my opinion, based on what I've been hearing, that they are going to work on this is if they get direction from council.
Mm-hmm.
And so it feels pretty important to me that if any of this is going to go forward, that we need to have council support it. And so, I haven't been listening to all the city council meetings, but if both of our representatives are saying that they're not going to vote for it, then I think that it would be pretty unlikely that everybody else would on council, and maybe Councilperson Dish and Ackman could kind of let us know what the temperature is. That would be my guess, but they can let us know. So this is really hard because, on the one hand, I don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good here, because it could just, the whole thing could just get tossed out. At the same time, I completely agree with the fact that we are in this emergency and we need to do something about this. And so, but I feel like, it's not just up to us. It's the only way that this gets any traction is if city council tells planning staff to work on this. And so I feel like if we're going to be able to get anything out of this, that we probably need to put this in a state that is more palatable to what's going on with city council. But I would be curious to hear what our city council folks say about that. Obviously, you're not in charge of what other people's opinions are, but you've been talking about some of these things, I'm sure. So I'd be curious to see what you all think.
Thank you. Commissioner Mitchell, you have your hand up. You're muted.
I am muted. I'm not muted. This is a message. That's really what this is. And I really hope that council members, I know that you're hearing it, and I know that you agree that we're in this emergency, but somehow we do have to make our way forward because we are running out of time. And it's not just for us, it's for the future.
Okay, Commissioner Mursky, and then Council Member Ackman.
I'm going back on my word only to comment to Commissioner Graham's comment. Commissioner Graham, this only addresses new development and major renovations. So it doesn't have anything to do with existing natural gas customers and forcing them to go over, just so that everybody is clear. I just wanted to make that clear for everybody's sake. Thank you.
And I'm quite clear of that too.
Okay, Commissioner Ackman, you have the floor.
I wanted to respond to Commissioner Gibrandel and appreciate the question. As you said, of course, we can't speak for council, but I would say that, as Councilmember Dish said, I think splitting this off, editing this to say recommended set of measures that city council and the city administration could implement, I feel like the rest of that is just fine, and I would be supportive of that. So if that would be a way forward to split this into two resolutions, with that, I would feel good about that.
Okay, thank you. So we have what I would consider a friendly amendment from Council Members Ackman and Dish about splitting this into two resolve clauses with the same whereas clauses. So that's my understanding, is we'll maintain the same whereas clauses with both resolutions, but we will have two separate two separate resolutions with just the one resolved clauses.
And those one for the second resolved should say recommended set of measures instead of carrot and stick.
Okay, so do I have a motion to accept that amendment from anybody?
You'd ask
If we get it, maybe just the changed wording sent to us, and then just to make sure that I'm not voting on something that.
Okay.
And so usually, if Sean could make, if Sean has a clear sense of what we're asking for and could make the change and either show it on the screen or send it to us, that would be great.
Yeah.
There were a couple of objections to the idea of splitting, and I'm not sure that it can be considered a friendly amendment if there were a couple of objections. And so I think, and I am not an expert in parliamentary procedure, but I think we might need to take a roll call vote on splitting, given that there were a couple of objections, unless people who made those objections wanted to withdraw them now. And if anybody knows this better than I do, please speak up. But I know that's how we do it on council.
It's the right way.
Yeah, I think that's the right way. So I think the first item was the first consideration is to alter the language in the second resolve clause. Or in the second resolve clause to remove carrots and sticks. Sean, could you put up the resolution as submitted?
Yes, I can do that.
So here we have both of them. So the amendment is to remove the suggested change in the language of the second resolve clause is a set of recommended measures that could implement. So just striking the carrot and stick in quotes language from that resolution. So do I have, let's see, do I have a motion to accept this change, this amendment for the second resolve clause?
So moved.
I'm having trouble seeing people
It's
here.
Anne, so moved. Yeah.
So which
Yeah,
order
Marcy.
should we be voting on all this in, though? The splitting first and the amendment, then the changed language, or?
I think we'll change the language and then we'll do the split
Okay, cool.
and then vote on each. So I have so we have, and I think we've exhausted the discussion on this topic. So let's proceed to a roll call vote. Sean, could you?
What is exactly is the language now of the second clause?
it would be just striking the carrot and stick and just leave it as a set of recommended measures that city council and city administration could implement.
Thank you.
If I will just chime in and say, if it is helpful, I can make after votes have happened, I can make whatever changes are voted on behind the scenes while we move on to our next agenda item, and then after that agenda item, we could return to this and have the vote.
We might do that. But I think let's conclude this item on the agenda first. But it would be good to see the final versions. So the amendment is what we're voting on is just striking the carrot and stick phrase there in the second resolve clause. So let's have a roll call vote on that.
I have a movement from Commissioner Marson. I don't believe we had a second on that motion though.
Oh, we did from Councilmember Achman.
Okay, thank you.
And so discussion. I don't see any hands up. I don't hear anybody. So all who vote to strike that carrot and stick language. Let's see. Let's go through the roll call for that. I think that's required.
All right. Councilmember Achman.
Yes.
Thank you. Chairperson Brown.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Kellawart.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Curtis.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Dale.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Dish.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Gibrandal.
Yes.
Commissioner Graham.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Gruber.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Marson.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Mirsky.
Yes.
Thank you. Vice Chairperson Mitchell.
No.
Thank you. Commissioner Nedrich.
No.
Thank you. Commissioner Oriole is absent. Commissioner Wahing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is 2 no's and the rest were yeses except for the absent.
Yep. So that passed. So the next vote would be splitting it up into two separate resolutions. So do I have a motion for that? To consideration, Lisa Dish.
Second.
John Mirsky seconds. Let's just why don't we proceed to I think we can do a voice vote on this one.
I don't think so because there were objections to splitting. So I think it needs to be a roll call vote.
Okay. Well, this is my reminder that I need to revisit the Robert's Rules of Order. So I'll defer to your judgment on that. So, okay, let's, so the question is, shall this resolution be split up into 2 separate resolutions, which maintain all the whereas clauses in both resolutions, but which the resolve clauses are separated for separate vote? That's the question. So do I have a motion to consider that?
I think we're
Steve?
good, didn't we?
I think we're good. Yeah.
I think I was the opponent, and I could withdraw that opposition if I was the sole one to avoid, request not splitting.
Okay.
And if I may, I would like to point out that this doesn't prevent anybody from voting in favor of both resolutions.
Well, that's correct. Yes. So, all right. So do you want to just go through the roll call again on that question?
All right. Councilmember Achman.
Yes.
Thank you. Chairperson Brown.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Kellawart.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Curtis.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Dale.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Dish.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Gibrandal.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Graham.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Gruber?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Marson?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Murski?
Yes.
Thank you. Vice Chairperson Mitchell?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Nedrich?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Oriole is absent, and Commissioner Waking?
Yes.
Thank you. That is unanimous, yes.
All right, thank you. Okay, so the next question is voting on the first resolve clause, which is urging City Council to ask the city administrator to work with the City Planning Commission to draft and pass with a great urgency fitting a declared emergency, an ordinance banning natural gas connections with extremely limited exceptions for all new construction, as well as major renovations and additions for council's consideration. So do I have a motion to vote on this resolution, on this revised resolution? Lisa Dish? And seconded by anybody? Brooks Curtis. Seconded it. So any discussion? All right, we want to do the roll call again on the first resolution, the first resolve clause.
All right, vote on the first resolved clause. Councilmember Ackman?
No.
Thank you. Chairperson Brown?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Callawart?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Curtis?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Dale?
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Dish?
No.
Thank you. Commissioner Gabe Randall?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Graham?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Gruber?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Marson?
No.
Thank you. Commissioner Murski?
Yes.
Thank you. Vice Chairperson Mitchell?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Nedrich?
No.
Thank you. Commissioner Oriole is absent, and Commissioner Waking?
Yes.
Thank you. That is 4 no's, the rest yes, which I believe passes.
So it passes. So okay, let's proceed to the vote on the second resolution, amended resolution, containing the single resolve clause with all the submitted whereas clauses. So the second clause is therefore be it resolved that the Ann Arbor Energy Commission urges the City Council to ask the City Administrator and the City Planning Commission to draft and pass with equal urgency a set of recommended measures that City Council and the City Administration could implement. For example, the restructuring of fees, priority processing, and using greater discretion when providing incentives such as tax credits and helpful guidance in order to promote all electric, sustainable, healthy, reliable, and affordable construction, in addition to other measures such as an updated State of Michigan Energy Code and Zero Code Appendix. So do I have a motion to vote on this question? Councilmember Dish, do I have a second? Brooks, Commissioner Curtis, seconded. Do we have any discussion? No, I hear and see none. So let's proceed to a roll call vote, Sean, on the second resolution.
All right, vote on the second resolution as amended. Councilmember Ackman?
Yes.
Thank you. Chairperson Brown?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Callawart?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Curtis?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Dale?
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Dish?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Gabe Randall?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Graham?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Gruber?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Marson?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Murski?
Yes.
Thank you. Vice Chairperson Mitchell?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Nedrich?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Oriole is absent, and Commissioner Waking?
Yes.
Thank you. That is a unanimous yes.
All right, thank you, Sean. So I think this concludes this matter. And I understand, and just in closing, I'll just say that I understand the objections to exposing the city to legal challenges, but I have to say that I don't think any meaningful change I'm aware of has ever happened without legal challenges. And that I would encourage city staff to look into look into and accept any pro bono help that may be offered that's acceptable and what might help them through this process. So the next item on the agenda is the solid waste updates and budget discussion. Thank you so much. We've had a lot of data submitted that's been posted to Legistar. So Sarah Mason, you have the floor.
I'm gonna kick us off and then turn it over to Sarah, if that's okay, Commissioner
Sure.
Brown. Chairperson Brown.
Sure,
Well, thank you all for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. We received some questions and we want to take the opportunity to hopefully address the questions you've had and answer them tonight. Our plan is for us to go through the questions that were provided by Chairperson Brown and Commissioner Mirsky and hopefully address the full amount of questions that were provided to us. We also would like to take the opportunity to share some things that we've identified as some opportunities associated with the solid waste program, where we see the Environmental Commission helping and providing support and guidance to our solid waste team. So we'll hope you'll be open to hearing some of our thoughts on that. I want to first thank our staff for spending the time. Sarah Mason spent a lot of time, and also some of our financial team pulling the information together that's been provided to you, and also drafting the answers to the questions that you'll hear from tonight. So appreciate the help that they have provided. We have, in addition to Sarah tonight, we also have Molly Maciejewski here. So we brought both of our subject matter experts on our solid waste program. So we're hopeful and confident that we can address the questions that you might have. I'm going to just start with answering the first question that was provided, and then I'm going to turn the floor over to Sarah, and she will take us through the rest of them. And that question was, who is responsible for understanding, budgeting, and monitoring and achieving solid waste financial targets? The budget that we have for solid waste is very complicated and has, what I've been told, is somewhere close to 3,000 line items. So this is not something that one individual is responsible for necessarily completely understanding and being conversant in the complete budget. So we operate in a collaborative environment when we have a team, our solid waste leadership, but also our financial support from the CFO and her staff. So together, that is where the expertise lies in being able to communicate and converse about the full content of the budget. So it's not a single individual's responsibility or purview. So with that, I will turn it over to Sarah, and she will walk you through the rest of the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to go through this. I'm not sure if all of the rest of the commission saw the questions submitted, so I will read them, maybe paraphrase, and then provide a response just so that you're clear on the discussion. So the first set of questions after the one that Brian addressed was around the new climate millage revenue and related solid waste expenditures. I believe you did get a written reply from OSI before this meeting, and then I'm going to address the other couple of questions that were mentioned. So the first question was around what the exact plans in the final budget for the spending of the climate millage related to solid waste programs. It does list two uses. One is the purchase of a truck for the expansion of commercial recycling collection that's budgeted at $450,000. And the other is for creating, implementing, and managing a commercial compost program. And that amount is actually $400,000. I think there needed to be a correction to that amount for the total of $850 that you saw in the response from OSI. Within that $400,000 for the commercial composting program, there is flexibility on exactly how that money will be spent for the program development. We are intending to hire a person that will help us flesh out what that plan looks like. The second question in this category was around if the plans had changed from the original 2-year allocation and it said if plans changed versus the original 2-year allocation plan, when and why was the Environmental Commission and the solid waste community not consulted before the budget proposal was finalized? Our plan did not change. The next question was around the purchase of the truck. And as I mentioned, we have 1 truck budgeted. There was a follow-up question of if the truck would be an EV consistent with the A20 plan. And the truck will not be an EV because the technology is not there for a front load garbage truck that's an EV. There are side load trucks, EV, that are being used in communities, but not front load trucks at this time. The next question is around the why is the full-time employee that's budgeted a temp if the commercial compost program is supposed to be operated on an ongoing basis? And it's a temp position because this position is intended to develop and start the program to get it to a place where then it would be managed by existing staff in an ongoing manner. The next question here, what are the SMART goals for the commercial compost program? And any metrics or targets by year that will indicate whether or not the program is a success. And at this time, the measures of success for that program are not yet defined. That will be part of the program development that's yet to come. However, I do want to mention that this is an area I'm going to, after we finish going through these questions, I also have a short update. Part of that is talking about our solid waste metrics in general. And there is an opportunity there, I think, for the commission to help with looking at what those metrics are and maybe looking to redefine them to track our programs. So that more to come on that question later. The next category of questions are around solid waste budget variances. And you've received several financial reports. There was a fourth quarter FY22 report provided at the October meeting. And in the interim, I believe in March, we provided a year-end annual summary from FY22. And so the question here is that why were there multi-million-dollar changes in the operating budget between the 2 reports? And I think that there was just some confusion in comparing the numbers. So the Solid Waste Fund fourth quarter report for FY22 included non-operating expenses. It lists total expenses that includes operating and non-operating expenses. However, in the annual report, those 2 categories of expenses are listed as separate line items. So if you compare the total expenses in the fourth quarter report to just the operating expenses in the annual summary, it's not comprehensive because it would be the fourth quarter report is the sum of both operating and non-operating expenditures. Further, the finalized FY22 numbers were not complete until after that October 27th meeting. And so there were significant changes between what was reported at that time and the final figures. So the annual summary report for FY22 was post-audit, and the FY22 fourth quarter report was before the audit. And so that is the other reason that those numbers do not align. The next question in variances, this is a question around what caused the variances between FY21 and FY22, and what were the drivers of these variances and how will they be reduced in the future. And there on the revenue side, the biggest variance for FY21 was around the recycling processing credit. It was reflective of an unanticipated rebound in a volatile market, which has in fact gone back down. So if you have any familiarity with the commodities market related to recycling, it goes up and down. As an example, the basket value for our recycling, the composition of the city's recycling per ton in April of 2022 was $99 a ton. In November of 2022, it was $7 a ton. So we're back up to around $25, but it goes up and down. And it was up unexpectedly, I think, as a rebound after COVID. So, and the other variances there were reflective of investment losses. The next question, still around variances. Oh, we received a question also on year-to-date operating budget status for FY23, which is the current fiscal year. We did provide those reports earlier this week. And so I think you've got the information there through the end of March. And the final question in variances, the big positive variances in FY21 and 22 were in the non-operating expenses. They added 9.3 million to the solid waste fund balance. Are significant non-operating expense variances expected in FY23 through 25? And if so, why? So those big credits, that 9.3 million that was added in the fund balance calculation, are primarily reflective of the year-end net present value of future liabilities for those non-operating expenditures. So a significant factor in the change to the liability calculation is a singular data point on the 30-year Treasury note rate at the time of the calculation, which is the last day of the fiscal year. Due to this, the changes in liabilities are difficult to predict, but we are currently projecting increases of $225,000 annually for fiscal year 23 through 25. The last category of questions were around the solid waste reserve fund. And I just want to say, as a point of clarity, there's no separate fund. We have one solid waste fund. So that's just, there's no separate reserve fund. There's one fund. The first question is, can the solid waste reserve fund be used for any purposes other than solid waste related expenses? And the answer is no. Can the fund only be used to cover unanticipated variances or one-time expenses? This is like slightly more nuanced, but not necessarily. However, it's best practice for our operating revenues to meet or exceed our operating expenditures. Therefore, it would be counter to that practice to use the fund balance to add recurring expenses to the budget without an outside revenue source. Eventually, the budget would reach a point where you don't have enough in reserve to cover those ongoing expenses.
Mm-hmm.
The next question is around future use for the solid waste reserve funds or the fund balance. So we do keep, there's about $19 million at the end of the last fiscal year in fund balance, and 25% of that is held in reserve of the, 25% of the operating budget is held in reserve, which is about $5 million, which leaves about a $14 million balance. And so that will actually come down quite a bit because we do have capital projects such as the drop-off station that will be hitting over the next couple of years as that gets built. And the project cost for that at this time is estimated between $6.5 and $8 million. So we won't know more until we get construction cost, but it's going to be a pretty expensive project. The last question in this fund balance category, is it acceptable practice that available excess reserve funds sit in a bank or investment account for years and earn a return that is not allocated specifically for solid waste purposes? No, returns gained on solid waste funds are allocated specifically for solid waste purposes. There was also a question about what spending is proposed in upcoming budget cycles, and the solid waste fund operating budget largely stays fairly consistent year to year. So unless a new program is added, there's not a lot of variability in that spending year over year.
Okay.
And that is all the questions that we received in advance on the financial reports. I don't know if there are other questions at this time. We'll do our best to answer them, or I can move forward with the rest of my update.
Well, thank you, Sarah. Yeah, why don't we, let's not wait till the end for all the questions. We have one hand up now from John Mursky. You have the floor.
I just wanted to say thank you very, very much. Those were excellent answers. Forgive me for all the detailed questions, but it really helped me better understand the situation, and hopefully it helped the other commissioners, and hopefully maybe it even helped you. That's my experience with these kinds of things, is that when you have probing questions, everybody learns in the process. And so thank you very much. I have no further questions.
Yeah. I also want to thank you, Sarah, for answering these questions in a thorough manner. Yeah, and I hope you learned something about it too. They weren't intended as criticisms, just trying to broaden our understanding, of the solid waste program. I think, let's see, I had one question, and that was, I know that the city can face liabilities for the closed landfill, for its closed landfill. So I was wondering, are you reserving, how are you dealing with that? Or have you purchased insurance to cover those eventualities, or do you have money reserved out of the solid waste fund for that eventuality?
Yeah, that liability is accounted for in the non-operating expenditures for the solid waste fund. So there are, I think it's 3 different categories. I know that one of them is OPEB, one is the landfill liability, and yes, the other is capital assets. So those are the 3 categories of non-operating expenditures. So yes, that is accounted for.
Okay, great. Thank you. So on Commissioner Dale, you have your hand up, and then Councilmember Hockman.
Yeah, I also just wanted to thank Sarah. I think a lot of the questions that were posed by other commissioners are ones I had, so I appreciate that. And I appreciate how succinct your answers were, while still being very thoughtful and thorough. And I'm wondering if I imagine maybe you have those answers written down just for quick reference, since you went so quick through all of them. Is that something that you'd be willing to share? I know it would be nice for me to be able to go back to those answers if I, you went through a lot. So if I wanted to reference those in the future, do you have a document like that that's like the FAQs that you could share with people who are interested?
It's currently written as sort of notes, so I would have to see. Yeah, it's just sort of notes to myself at this time. But we could probably provide something that summarizes everything. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Ackman.
I just wanted to hop on the gratitude train. I had heard that this budget was a very complicated one. I didn't know it was 3,000 lines. So I just really appreciate the work and the collaboration that went into providing these very thorough and succinct answers. So thanks to everybody that worked on this.
Yeah. Any other questions for Sarah at this point? City staff? No. All right. So Sarah, please continue.
Okay, good. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Okay. I do have just a couple of slides
Okay. Yeah. Sean, can you give Sarah the privileges?
I believe I already made you a co-host, so you should be able to share, but let me know if you can't, Sarah.
Okay. It's not, I see something that says advanced sharing options. I don't see, apologies, I got it. Okay.
Great, we can see that, thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Go through this kind of quickly. The first is just the things we're going to cover. Solid waste fund update, which we just went through. A quick update on downtown solid waste issues, winter compost metrics, where I do want to spend a little bit of time talking, and then just touch briefly on a couple of things we're looking to do in the next year or so, things that we're focusing on. We have covered this. So downtown solid waste update, City Council did approve the new commercial franchise contract with WM for refuse hauling on March 20th. That does include a subscription service for commercial compost collection to be provided by My Green Michigan as a subcontractor to WM. The collection under that agreement begins on July 1. And we're currently working with WM on the transition plan and communications. I mentioned this previously. The biggest change is that the billing and customer service responsibilities will be moving from the city to WM, and the city retains oversight for those functions, but customers will get to interact directly with the waste hauler, which is something we heard during our stakeholder engagement and putting together the RFP, was that they wanted to be able to have more direct access to the provider. Otherwise, we have seen some improvement in the downtown alleys. We continue to work with the downtown stakeholders, including businesses, to improve the aesthetics. And another part of this new contract is we have a focus on trying to consolidate some of the collection containers to improve the efficiency and the number of containers you see in the space. That will also open up room to add compost containers should businesses want to add that service as well. On winter, I was also asked about a winter compost update. We've had winter compost for 2 years now. We started with the winter of 2022 and we continued in 2023. Relatively small volume collected over those. The services provided the first week of the month on your regular collection day. But we do think that it has increased the amount of compost collected on the whole, at least for 2022. 2023 will be a little more difficult to tease out because we had an ice storm at the end of February and then immediately started collecting storm material as well. So it might be a little challenging to discern the impact of each. I did want to share, though, the tonnage collected. So the blue bars represent 2022, the orange bars 2023, January, February, March. So you can see in both years, each month a little bit more was collected. This is obviously what I was mentioning. A bit outsized because everyone's trees had damage. But we did see even an increase, in the first 2 months of the year over last year. So we think that we've did a better job of letting folks know about the service, and more people were aware that they could put their card out that week for collection. So we'll continue to track that. We don't at this time have any changes planned for the program for 2024. Once a month seems to meet the need for most residents for that collection. Okay, jumping right into my metrics conversation. This shows you the percent of the annual tons by program type. So orange is compost or organics, blue is recycling, and gray is trash. Percentage of the whole these are fiscal years. So from 2018 through 2022, which is the last complete year we have data for. And so to get at the city's diversion rate, it's the difference between the tons landfilled or the percent landfilled, and the total. We've been averaging around a 33% diversion rate. This looks fairly static. However, I'll show you on the next slide, our overall tons collected have continued to decrease, which is a beneficial metric to see. So, okay, sorry, I see John, Commissioner Calvert, you have your hand up. Did you have a question?
Yeah, Sarah, quickly. Sorry if I missed it, but what is this based on? Weight, volume? The unit here?
Good question. Yes. So weight. So percent of the whole by weight. Yes. And I also want to just mention that, this is an imperfect number. This represents the tons that we have data for. We know that there are some leaks in the system, if you will. There might be more recycling that's happening that we're not able to capture. And so we are also looking at ways to gather more of that information if we can gather it in a way that's sustainable and repeatable year over year.
Can I chime in there?
Yes, please.
I just want to point out too that the university has their own recycling collection. So this is what the city collects and what the city contractors collect only. So when we're thinking about community-wide, we're not capturing that data in our metrics.
Yeah, very good point. Thank you, Molly, for jumping in. this is a similar chart to the one you just saw. However, this is just in tons. So total tons collected by program type. And so I've circled this 47,700. As you can see that the total tonnage, which is really the ultimate goal, is that we would like to see waste generation go down. Recycling more is wonderful, but we are very focused on waste prevention, waste reduction, and then what you have left, doing the most responsible thing with either composting or recycling. And so we do think that that's a good indicator. This is where I wanted to spend a little bit of time, however. Weight-based metrics are challenging. We have seen a light weighting of packaging material over the past couple of decades. And so when you look especially at like a recycling rate, the material going into the recycling bin has gotten lighter weight by design. You've seen newspaper drop out. You've seen a lot of glass containers drop out. So when it's a percentage of a whole, if your trash is staying heavy, then it gets increasingly difficult to add percentage points to a diversion rate based on weight. Also, a weight-based metric completely misses any waste prevention that happens. So that doesn't get captured because you're not collecting it and weighing it. So there's some leading communities and others in the industry who are really looking at upstream metrics. How can you measure waste prevention? How can you look at maybe waste generation per capita? Is it decoupled from population growth? Is it, how far is it above some baseline if you have a baseline? People also look at things like capture rate instead of recycling rate, which is of the available recyclables generated, how much of that are you actually capturing? And then there's also a need, there's some qualitative measures, there's some intangible benefits that happen, especially in the circular economy work, when you're making connections and you're keeping things out of the landfill, you're keeping them in circulation. You may not have a way to record every transaction that occurs, but there are still benefits that are happening. So all of that to say, staff are looking and evaluating what metrics we're using and trying to choose, the optimal subset of metrics that better reflect the city's current climate and circular economy goals of reducing overall waste generation, things like preventing food waste and increasing reuse. And I think that this is really an area where staff would welcome input from the Environmental Commission and working with you all on thinking about what those metrics could be. That's my plug for that discussion to be had later. So I also wanted to give an update on the proposed new drop-off station. We continue to work on that, and we did do stakeholder feedback, which the commission, amongst others, we sent out an email to around 85 sort of interested stakeholders, folks that represent communities that their residents use the facility or otherwise are interested partners. We also have held 2 public engagement meetings. We held one at the Senior Center at Burns Park, one at Pittsfield Township Town Hall, and got a lot of great feedback. We have narrowed the 3 conceptual designs down to 1, which I'll show you on the next slide. But just a general timing update. At this time, we're hoping to have the site plan submitted to, let me back up a second. In case you're unaware, the proposed facility is within Pittsfield Township. So while it's a city-owned property, we do have to go to Pittsfield Township Planning Commission and their approval process for this project. So we're hoping to have that site plan submitted this summer. And when we receive approval, then we would go out for construction document, hopefully get that started probably early next year at this point. And then the facility would open in the fall of 2024, spring 2025. These are very broad timelines because once we get into the site plan process, there are some things that are out of our hands in terms of how fast that moves along. I did want to show, in case you have been, there's a project website, a2dropoff.com. If you haven't been there, it's got all the background information. If you did see the three conceptual designs that we were working with originally, this is the final conceptual design that was created. And we did incorporate stakeholder feedback and made a few changes. The largest one is that this main building that you would drive through, this is where you drop off like single stream batteries, electronics, things like that, originally had traffic on both, or operations on both sides of a center drive-through line, and it was redesigned to have one long linear building, so all the operations can be on one side, and the cars, that are coming through the drive-through would drive this way. The other big addition is we added this space here, and I apologize if this is very small. I will see if I can zoom in. It's also on the project website where you can look at it. This is a reuse space, a space noted as a 5,000 square foot building for some future reuse activities that would be defined. So, Commissioner Graham, did you have a question?
I did. Entry off Platt Road or entry off the main entry to the compost center and MRF and over the scale?
Mm-hmm.
Both entries?
Good answer. Yes, but for two different traffic streams. So this is Platt over here on this side, and I can show you a different image. I can pull it up that puts you more in the world of where this is located. And that entrance would be for the passenger vehicles, for those that are coming to drop things off. That traffic is indicated by a red arrow on this site design. And there is a proposed access road this way that goes, this is the city's existing compost facility that goes across that railroad easement this way to enter the Wheeler Center. So the blue arrows represent the heavy truck traffic, and those trucks would enter the Wheeler Service Center in the existing gate off Platt where the scale is, but then they would be able to access the compost site through that interior access road. So there was a strong desire to keep the industrial heavy truck traffic and the passenger vehicle traffic separate from one another. So that will allow that to happen.
Good thinking. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So I encourage you to check out our website if you have any interest in kind of seeing the other stuff that's been put together for this project. And the last thing, I just wanted to touch on a few things that we're working on. We do have a contract with the Ecology Center for marketing, outreach, and education for all of our programs. And one of those work areas is around a social-based marketing campaign. We are working with them now to hold focus groups to start thinking about attitudes and behaviors towards trash recycling and compost, and develop messaging that would motivate more people to participate in those programs. We're also, our compost program, we do biannual composition audits for our recycling stream. We've never really done an audit looking at our compost stream, and that is something that we agreed to do in the First Amendment to our operating agreement with We Care. So we will be doing an audit of that material. It'll be more visual than weight-based, but it will allow us to see what the contaminants of concern are for the compost stream so that we can do education and outreach around that. We have a group of A20 ambassadors that have an interest in that area, and we're working with them on a project. We've also been piloting some multifamily property outreach for recycling, and then hopefully for compost as well as we start to develop those programs. Move in and move out. Move out for the spring of this year is going on now. It started yesterday. We'll be open again tomorrow, Sunday, Monday, and Wednesday. But we also are looking to broaden what we're doing with Move Out. And we've had some great conversations with our partners at the university and with the apartment association and others about looking for more collaboration to do to provide additional programs and services to keep more material out of the landfill. We've talked to a lot of other university towns, other cities. People are doing a lot of creative things, and we think that there's more that we could be doing here to recoup some of that material and keep it from going into the trash. Also, Brian mentioned we had a couple of areas where we thought we could interface with the commission, and the Zero Waste Working Group, recently reconvened. And I think one of the things we might talk about there, if there's interest, is starting to research around C&D and deconstruction ordinances, looking for examples of how other cities have structured them, what their approach and timelines for implementation, as well as looking to see what we might need locally to support that. So that's another area where we're hoping that we can work with the commission on researching those ideas and look to see what might work for us here in Ann Arbor. And that is the end of my remarks. I want to thank you all again for the opportunity. And if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to take them at this time.
Well, thank you, Sarah. This is all very thoughtful, and things seem to be moving in a very good direction. So thank you so much. Chris, you have your hand up?
I do. I'm reminded when I was a boy, when I would see Burma Shave series of signs along the roads. It seems to me one way that people bring recyclables, compost materials particularly, in is to have some sort of electronic signage where you might give them messages. It's astonishing to me how much, especially plastic trash, comes in with compost loads. It's just ridiculous that isn't separated out before these guys put the stuff in their trailers and whatever they're bringing in, primarily compostable, but serious trash. And you could educate, and you might have to do it in Spanish as well as English, with signage on the incoming road, and might help a little. Thank you.
Lisa, you have your hand up.
Thank you. Thank you for this presentation. It was really wonderful and incredibly exciting. I have one quick question, actually two quick questions. One is, I know that you guys have been really entrepreneurial and won some great grants for the DOS to support that. How much of the 6.5 to 8 million, and actually probably higher than that, will be covered by the grants?
Great question. So we have $850,000 of grant funding from Eagle to put towards the project. Additionally, Washtenaw County has given a soft commitment of around $1 million towards the project. That cost sharing has not been set up yet, but that's the figure. So close to $2 million will be covered by other funding sources, but that still leaves a good amount that the city will be covering.
And I will just chime in, that is subject to approval by the Board of Commissioners still at the county. We're not going to take that forward until we're ready to go out for bid. It seems like a more perfect time. Once we get that site plan approved from Pittsfield, then we'll be ready to move forward.
Wonderful, wonderful. And then I wanted to know a little bit more about how the reuse site was envisioned to be used. And I just toured the MRF and it blew me away. That and the wastewater treatment plant are currently my favorite places in the city, but neither of them lets me walk my dog there, so won't be a frequent visitor. So, and one of the things I learned at the MRF is that they're going to do outreach with Perpetual to find out people's, I guess, preferences, or I'm not exactly sure what they're looking for, but people's feedback around returning containers. And, I guess, where would you do it? what would make you participate, what would be attractive. And I wondered if, I don't know if you wanted to say something about that, because this commission could certainly promote that to their networks. And I think the engagement is at the end of May. And I don't know if some of it is any of it an online survey, or is it most of it virtual? So actually that was more than one quick question. I'm sorry.
So I guess starting in reverse, I think that outreach and engagement that Live Zero Waste and Perpetual is doing is in person. Sean, you can correct me if that's wrong, but yes, they are looking for feedback on how to expand the reusable container program and scale it up citywide. We did partner with Perpetual on an EPA Swiffer grant, which is their infrastructure grant for recycling, to ask for additional funding for the DOS, as well as including some infrastructure to collect the containers. We've not heard yet any outcome on that grant, but I know that Perpetual, I think, has other funding and is looking to move that forward either way. So that is exciting. I want to say it's May 22nd. Is that right, Sean?
So May 22nd is going to be an event that is focused on government officials, nonprofits, and business owners. And then there will be, I believe, 2 or 3 other events that are for the general public to attend. I had a meeting with them last week, and it sounds like the main focus is on these in-person events, but they do plan to have some virtual engagement opportunities.
Right. And then, Councilmember, to your other question about the reuse space at the DOS, the programming for that is not known at this time. We just knew that it was a priority and something we wanted to incorporate into the site design from the beginning. So between the project team that's been working on it, which is Recycling Arbor, Washtenaw County, the city, and our design consultant, RRS, all that expertise together, felt that the size and space that you saw on the concept plan would support a robust reuse operation.
If I could say one more thing, I want to tell you that I assigned my students in my class to do a project, and one of them did a flea market as part of Springfest at UMich. And so I think that in terms of having options other than just disposing responsibly of the things you don't need, I think the students are geared toward, I think they would love to sell their stuff, but we could even perhaps persuade some of them to swap it. And the end and beginning of the year are good times because you move into a new size residence, and you need things that you didn't need when you were in a dorm. So I think there's stuff we can do, and there are a couple of student groups that are active, and I would love to help in whatever way I can and see us really tap into some of that energy that those young people have.
Thank you very much. I will remember that offer as we get that planning started.
John Mursky, you have the floor.
Kudos on a really good presentation. This is one of the best presentations we've had, at least that I can recollect, in quite a while. So thanks very much. And also thank you, the 3 of you, for spending part of your Thursday evening with us. I know that probably wasn't your first choice. So thanks very much. I have 4 very quick points. The charts were helpful. John Kellewart and maybe I think one other person made a comment or 2 that might be good to footnote about these being weight-based and things like that. So if we sort of update and reuse those charts, it would be great to add those footnotes. My sense is that you're absolutely right about moving away from diversion rate and looking at tonnage to landfill. But there's a couple of, I think, good reasons for continuing to use diversion rate, because it can be illuminating. First of all, a lot of other communities use diversion rate. And secondly, it is a rate. It's something that is normalized. And one way of normalizing tonnage to landfill is do it on a per capita basis. And then you can benchmark again. Just absolute tonnage to absolute tonnage is not something that you can easily benchmark. Diversion rates or a tonnage rate to landfill is something that you can benchmark. And it provides some level of illumination. So I think that's something to consider. But I generally agree with the movement away from that. I just want to make two suggestions that you don't have to respond to. First is I'd like staff to look at exploring providing some level of resources to RAA for better maintenance of the R to Z recycling guide. It is linked to the city's website, and I've been told by 3 different people in leadership at RAA that they don't have enough resources to do that, and it's not necessarily always up to date, and it's not necessarily always, as I understand it, even consistent with staff's understanding. And I don't know how much money that would take, but please reconsider that and maybe talk with them about what might be appropriate. And then the last thing is I had posed a question by email and I'd received a good response, but I just wanted to put it out there for everybody else to know. And that is an energy commissioner had recommended to me, and I passed on the idea of putting solar on the roof of the MRF. I understand that the city has a lot of other things that it's juggling right now, but I really think that's something that should be put in the parking lot. As far as I recollect, it's a good south-facing roof. There is a load that corresponds almost exactly to when solar power is being generated. So you can actually just use the power right on site. And it just seems to me it's something that is a really good idea and should be considered for the midterm, let's say, or whenever appropriate. So those are the 4 points. And again, thank you very much.
Mr. Stiglitz, you have your hand up. You have the floor.
Thank you, and thank you for all the comments. Great questions, and we're happy to be here and to be able to support this group. I did want to make one comment as we were talking about funding for the drop-off station. We are also continuing to explore other opportunities. So just so you're aware that that's the funding sources that we've identified are not the end game. We're still continuing to look for new opportunities. And then I guess the last point I'd like to make is that I am offended by Councilmember Dish's comment that the wastewater plant is one of her favorite locations and not the drinking water plant. Because I was the one who gave her a tour of the drinking water plant, and obviously that did not resonate well with her. So
no, I'm so stupid. That's what I meant. I've never been to the wastewater plant.
Oh. I will do a quick plug though and let you know that we do have an open house coming up on May 6th from 10 to 2. So you're all welcome. If you are interested and haven't been, we will be doing tours for 4 hours of the city's drinking water plant. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Machewski, you have your hand up.
Yeah, Brian, I was going to make sure Brian gave a plug for the water plant open house, but I knew he would be on top of that one right away. The one thing that we were remiss in not talking about, and I apologize, was the cost of service study that we have planned for solid waste. That is something that's long overdue, and we're committed to doing that. We're working right now on an RFP, but basically when the solid waste millage was set up, it was decades ago, and we were thinking trash and then even just really in the infancy of recycling, and things have expanded so much, yet the millage sort of remains as it is. And so performing this cost of service study over the next year will really help us understand where all of the millage money is and how we can maybe look at programming and being more strategic about expanding programs. So just wanted to give an update on that. We'll have more to come, and if probably the next meeting we can tell you where we are with that.
All right, thank you. Molly, just one question.
Yeah.
When is the solid waste millage up for renewal?
That's a great question. I'm not entirely sure. It just automatically renews, and it's quite a long time. And I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I'll check into it.
Okay. It's not soon. I know that much because I think it was just renewed not that long ago.
Shannon, you have your hand up. You have the floor.
Yeah, thank you all. And I'm wondering, I was just in Vancouver a little while ago, and they had bins for textiles recycling in the apartment buildings. And I'm just wondering, is there any kind of scenario where that you all are considering that for the future? I know that, sometimes I have stuff that is just like you can't give it away. It's got too many, the socks have too many holes or, whatever it is. And I'm just wondering I wanted to ask the long-term question around that.
Thank you. I do know that in the solid resource management plan, textile recycling was one of the things that was identified as a program to explore. So we haven't, I think was recommended more of like a curbside program for collection. However, I know there are some drop boxes. They're not affiliated with the city. I've seen them around, so I can't speak to who collects them. But related to your idea of, or the thing that you were mentioning about putting them in apartments for usable goods, that is one of the things that we know some communities have done around move out, is actually had, it takes a lot of partnership though, because you have to monitor them carefully, but put collection boxes closer, like in apartment or in properties where there's a lobby, where there's a space that can accommodate. It's not a fit for everything. That's why I think it's a mix of programs to address that, but to collect usable things. But textile recycling is on our list. I don't have an update at this time on.
Yeah, I can add to that. When we put together the solid waste resource management plan and looked at the curbside program, we looked at some other neighboring communities that were offering it. And we found out that a lot of those textiles, even like the holy socks, they're turned into rags and used, so they are being reused. And that's something that we can continue to explore as we, as Sarah mentioned, look into this more. So it's probably going to be a combination of things that we offer.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Mursky, you have your hand up. You have the floor.
Yeah, I thought I might respond to that real quickly. And by the way, Shannon, thanks for the tip. Maybe that's a good place for all of us to look. Steve and I are members of a group called the Washtenaw Zero Waste Coalition, and we've talked about this. And a lot of textiles, when they go to, for example, the various resale stores, there's some materials that are then they're not judged to be usable there, and a lot of those are shipped overseas, and there's a lot of stories that indicate that a high percentage of that actually then just ends up being dumped somewhere. And then there's another problem with textile recycling in that you have got all kinds of different materials, and even materials are mixed materials. And usually if you have different kinds of uses like insulation and things like that, they have to be a particular material. They can't be mixed with, a mixed material with spandex or with polyester or this and that or the other. So I think maybe we could learn from Vancouver. I would think that they're pretty advanced on these kinds of things, but there seem to be a lot of pitfalls with doing. It's not something that's easy to do. So thanks.
Hey, thank you.
I have one last thing, if I may, and that is, could Sarah's presentation be posted to Legistar? I don't know if it has been in the meantime, but it wasn't a couple of days ago. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for your time. And I think it's well appreciated. So let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which would be reports from committees, other commissions, council, and chair. So let's start with a report from the Natural Features Committee. Chris?
I noticed in the paper today that the contract was approved by the council for the consolidation of the city's master plans, which I understand is going to include the natural features master plan. I guess I would say it is time to respond to the Environmental Commission's request to have our participation at the table in how that plan develops, at least with regard to natural features. It won't be satisfactory to cast our opinions and wishes and desires with the general public. We want to be at the table.
Duly noted. I'll have a comment. I have a comment during the chair's report about this as well. But let's move on to the pollinators.
Thank you. I want to thank staff and Sean and Commissioners Gruber, Ackman, and Dale for participation in getting us to our new program that is the evolution, or you could say the metamorphosis of Nomome into the pollinator aware yard care program. And so I guess I would say it launched this week. We had a really nice article in the newspaper yesterday. It's been on a few social media things, I believe. And Sean has informed us that we've had something like 50 people register for the program in order to get a yard sign, which is really nice. So this program has yard signs available. It's really nice. They have some instructive information on them so that people walking by will get information that's relevant to supporting pollinators, which is avoiding pesticides and having native plants. And a QR code that goes to our website that is linked as a hub to multiple sites within the city website, entire website that includes, oh, thanks, Sean. There we go. That includes NAP and the water management, I'm not saying the right name, but Jen Lawson's department. So that people, we're not being redundant within the city services. And we also have references to outside organizations. So there you have it. I'm really pleased. I had to be convinced, but I am particularly pleased that we moved from focusing on a single month to focusing on the entire year, and meaning the entire life cycle of pollinators that contribute to life and natural features in our city.
Well, hi, Councilmember Ackman, you have the floor.
I just wanted to chime in to say that there was also a really nice MLive article that had Commissioner Mitchell, some pictures, and I just thought it was a good insight into what different people in our community are doing to support pollinators. So we'll miss that. Check it out. It was great.
Okay, Chris Graham, you have your hand up. You're muted. You're muted.
I'm sorry. Kudos to Rita for making this absolutely blossom this spring. I was afraid we were going to lose this program, and she really deserves a lot of credit for really expanding it this year.
Well, thanks, Chris. I really do want to pass that credit on to many other people because it was quite a broad effort.
Please
Thanks.
do.
Yeah, it's wonderful to see. Okay, let's, how about Zero Waste Working Group?
Yeah, hi. Thanks to Sean's quick efforts. In your inbox is a link to the report completed recently by the U of M's master students on the Circular Economy Initiative. They presented to the Environmental Commission a couple months ago, but this is their final report that they've wrapped up. They also presented last Monday, along with Jenny Petoskey from the city, to a wide group of city staff, planning, public works, OSI, resource recovery, solid waste, on kind of the big picture of everything that's been going on with the Circular Economy Initiative. I think some of our next steps with that work is kind of outreach and engagement strategy that we're putting together based on some work that a consultant is doing right now, aiming for equity in those efforts. I think that'll be our biggest next step, but we're also thinking about how to really keep the energy going around this work. Lisa, anything you wanted to add to that?
I think you covered all of it. I think we have had a brainstorm and a couple of big ideas, but until we are sure that those have support from staff, we don't want to float them.
That's prudent. Okay. Let's see. The water quality work group did not meet, but Sarah, do you have anything that you'd like to let us know about?
No, I don't have any updates at this time.
Okay, thank you. I'll schedule a meeting for the next month. Let's see. So let's move on to other commissions. How about energy?
3 quick updates. We passed the natural gas resolution basically in the form that we originally considered it in this evening. That was one point of our agenda. Second main point was that Missy Stoltz presented the natural gas franchise situation. That was after it had already been approved by council. So if anybody's interested in details on that, I encourage you to go into Legistar and look at the last meeting where there's her presentation. And I just like to point out that as Missy has presented to both council and us, there's lots of potential options and ways that this could go. So if you're interested in some of them, one idea is, and this is implied also in the name of the agenda item in the Energy Commission, and that is that the natural gas franchise could be transitioned into something called a heating franchise. So instead of supplying natural gas to provide heat, that you actually provide heat directly through geothermal. And that's being piloted in the city of Boston. And there's a nonprofit there called Heat, HEET. And if you Google that, then you can find out what Boston is doing. And actually, it's my understanding that the city just received a grant from the DOE to run a pilot of a district geothermal system in the Bryant neighborhood. I think it was $1 million or something like that. So obviously that's obviously going to be really a regional possible trend. There's even other kinds of things that could happen in California and other places. They're mixing in hydrogen into natural gas and testing that out as a possibility. So this could explore lots of different opportunities for the city, and it would address what Chris talked about earlier, not just new developments, but all the customers that we currently have. So keep your attention on that. And like I said, go to Legistar. And then finally, I just thought I'd mention that we're having elections next month. And both I as chair and Carlene Calvin Garcia are both termed out. Our bylaws state that you cannot serve more than 3 years in your office. And so there will be a new chair and vice chair of the Energy Commission, and potentially also a new liaison to the Environmental Commission. So those are the three things we covered. We talked about the elections and the duties and things like that. Those are the three things that were on our agenda. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, John.
Oops. Sorry.
Okay. Let's go for Parks Advisory.
Hi, we just met last week. Some updates are solar installation has begun at our parks properties that had been designated for that program. The parks are going to be participating in the new and improved pollinator aware program. I think several parks have been earmarked. They're going to have areas that will have less mowing happening over the course of the summer. So thank you. I know Rita was involved in that and talking to the Parks Department about that. Fuller Park has been designated as potentially being a part of the bicentennial celebration next year. Summer camp, getting the Parks Department right now is heavily involved in getting ready for summer camps, getting the pools ready, liveries, golf courses and all that. So a lot of activity there. And apparently the summer camps have been, the enrollment there has increased over the past few years, and they're excited about a big year this year for that. And then finally, in January, some of the fees for golf and the canoe liveries will be going up. And, so that's about it.
Great. Thank you. Planning?
Yeah, we've had 2 meetings. I was able to go to one because I've been sick. And the one meeting that I attended, the big item on the agenda was the credit union that's over on Plymouth Road. And I would say that how it pertains to this body is that it was a special exemption use because they were looking to do a drive-through, and we denied them because we have discretion there, and because we are trying to move away from drive-throughs and car-dependent design. And they also didn't have really much going on in terms of sustainability. So we had more discretion with that vote. They, I think, are thinking about trying to come back and change their plan. So we'll see what happens as that comes. And before I hand it off to Lisa, who's going to cover the next meeting, I just wanted to respond a little bit because I did talk with our planning manager about natural features kind of being involved in some of that. And what he said is that the natural features portion of the master plan will definitely be updated. What he said with this next effort, what he said, though, is that there really needs to be a whole community discussion around priorities, because I know that we've been hearing it on Planning Commission, there's a lot of emphasis right now on increased housing as well. And so he indicated that we really needed to have a bigger conversation about where the community is in terms of priorities with changing some of those things. And so that he hopes that we'll have a robust dialogue around that during the information kind of during those sessions. So come out and make your views known. I'm sure many other people will too, with that whole process, but that's kind of where things are right now. And is that we really need to kind of figure that out, with our own community about where we want to put our energy for that. So I just wanted to report on that, and then I'll hand it over to Lisa to go over some changes that were discussed for the new transit corridor area.
Yes, thank you, Shannon. Well, we had a funny meeting because we had 6 members there, but one had to recuse themselves because their employer owns property along the TC1 corridors. And so that meant that everything we voted on failed because we had a subquorum. So we voted on some tweaks regarding automobile related uses on the TC1 corridors. And we voted to change auto and truck and equipment repair and auto sales and rental from it would be normally prohibited along TC1, but there was robust discussion of that when we rezoned stadium. And so we changed it to a special exception use. Staff had actually recommended that it just be a permitted use, and that they felt that so long as it conformed to the form that we have along TC1, it would be fine. But the commissioners wanted to make it a special exception use. I didn't vote with them on that. So that failed 4-1. So it had 4 votes, blah, 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 very funny. Then we also decided that automobile services have to be located in an enclosed building, and that failed with a unanimous vote of approval. I think that's the way to put it. And staff didn't really have a chance to kind of analyze whether there were unforeseen consequences of that one. But by the time that comes to council, that'll be foreseen. And I anticipate having a chat with you, Commissioner Gibrandel, about that meeting in full, so that I can understand where you can maybe help me understand better how the discussion unfolded there, and I can fill you in on some other stuff, but your voice was missed, I can tell you. Your expertise.
Hey, thank you. Anything on transportation? Dharma?
Yes, sorry, it just took me a minute to find the mute button. We got some carbon reduction program grants. So $1.18 million in carbon reduction program funding for 2 projects that support both A20 and Vision Zero, which is our transportation plan. The first is a project that will happen in fiscal year 24 that will convert all 4,000 some odd low efficiency DTE owned streetlights to LED fixtures. that are about 1.2 to 3 times more efficient. The second is a fiscal year 26 project that will fund the planning and the implementation to create, I've heard this called a variety of things. You could call it a bike boulevard, a greenway, and all ages abilities bike network on West Washington Street, which has been in discussion for quite some time, I understand. That's it.
Great, thank you. So let's see, council. Council report. Anything?
I would just say that we passed the 415 Washington PUD, which pre-entitles the property to be developed. And we added a requirement at the table to make it, Lisa, you can help me if I get this wrong.
Net zero
ready. Okay, yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. Anything else? No? Okay. So just for the chair, I have just a brief question, which should involve some discussion, and that is that there's been some talk about miscommunication and misalignment between staff and the commissions. I'm not just talking about the Environmental Commission. Now, and it occurred to me during some of the discussions I had, especially with Councilwoman Dish, that the Zero Waste Work Group that she works on has regular staff participation in the working group. And also, as I recall from conversations with Chris Graham, the ordinance changes that were worked on for many years, for natural features, were done in conjunction with a staff member until a few years ago. So I'm thinking that the working groups, we could probably all become more efficient and effective if all of the working groups had regular participation from a city staff member. And I would just like to throw that out there. And I'm hoping to explore this. So I'm open to any ideas or any discussion. We don't necessarily have to have it tonight, but I'd like to have it at the next meeting. We might have some discussion. And I'm not sure what the city administrator's opinion would be about this, but it's been a tradition, and it seems to me that it's been a fruitful tradition that's been lost for some of the working groups, especially the natural features working group since just before the pandemic, and some of the other groups. So Sean, you have your hand up. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you. I'll just chime in and say that this has been discussed as something that staff wanted to bring forward to the Environmental Commission as well. So thank you for bringing it forward, Chairperson Brown. There are commissions, such as the Energy Commission, where it is written in the bylaws that there must be a staff liaison to every working group. The Environmental Commission is not one of those, so it is not written in the bylaws, but we did want to bring forward the recommendation that there be a staff liaison for all the working groups. So I certainly would support having a conversation about that at an upcoming meeting.
Okay. Well, if the city staff is in agreement, why don't I just send a memo to you and ask for volunteers for who would like to participate in the different working groups.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Dish, you have the floor.
I think this is a great idea moving forward. And I wondered, though, if maybe we should consider ask for staff feedback on prioritizing our working groups, because it may be difficult to staff all of our working groups. And but I heard, Sarah Mason called out a couple of things that she was hoping for participation on. And obviously natural features is a key group, and obviously pollinators are steaming or buzzing along, however we want to put it, and also have staff support. So, but it might be good for us to kind of take a holistic approach to our work and think about, I think one of the reasons why the Zero Waste Working Group has been successful is, first of all, that we worked on the Circular Economy Initiative, which was kind of a little bit of a shift, but not really, because those are just terms, but also because we thought about lending our energy and expertise in an area where the city wants to move forward, but doesn't have the capacity. So we don't want to, the way we would love to have this work is to have our capacity, fortify staff capacity, rather than our commission's working groups spreading staff thinly. So maybe before you sent that forward, we might think about reviewing our working groups and just thinking about our priorities more holistically, if that's not if that's okay with folks.
No, that's a great suggestion. I mean, in particular, like the water quality working group, a lot of what's written into our mission involves actually not just the city staff, but also the county water commissioner and their Huron River Watershed Council. So that's the place where I think it needs a little, especially needs some more thinking and discussion. Okay. So the next item on the agenda is a report from staff. Sean Reynolds posted a staff update from Legistar. So Sean, do you want to let it stand as it is, or would you like to highlight a few things? Or
yes, that document is available for everyone to view. I do want to highlight the two items that are at the bottom from the city clerk's office. Those are that commissioner reappointments are going to be on the city council agenda on May 1st for their first reading, and then on May 15th for their second reading and approval from city council. Once they are approved, commissioners who are up for reappointment, which is several of you on the line, should receive your reappointment letters from Sarah Lannis before May 31st. Also, the clerk's office is going to be hosting an orientation for new and existing board and commission members. That's going to be a 45-minute presentation and then a 45-minute Q&A. That will be in mid-June. The date is still being finalized, but it will be recorded and available for later viewing for those of you who are not able to attend. We do highly encourage all commissioners to attend to get a refresher on the commission roles and the handbook that I did send out in an email a few weeks ago as well. So those are the two main updates there. Also, an update that didn't make it into the document because we heard after I put this document together is the announcement that Commissioner Mirsky made earlier about the grant for geothermal. So I don't have the exact amount that we were awarded in front of me, unfortunately, but it was a $13 million total grant that went out by the DOE to 11 different communities, and we are one of those 11. And that will be focused in the Bryan neighborhood on efficiency improvements, rooftop solar, and battery storage for heating and cooling of 262 different households, the Bryan Elementary School, Bryan Community Center, a mental health facility, and also a public works site. So we are very excited about that. And those are our announcements.
Oh yeah, I'll just say, Sean, that there was an article in MLive this afternoon that was posted online about that, and I think the number I remember is $588,000 for that grant for a district-wide geothermal project. You know, for the whole neighborhood plus, you know, the community center and a mental health center, and also Wheeler. And the Wheeler site that the city owns. So that's and John mentioned as well. So and also I want to remind everybody that when we meet in May, we will have our appointments, and we'll also have a part of the agenda item will be an election for chair and vice chair. So so be looking for nominations then. So that will be in the next item on the agenda is items for the next agenda. So we will have a vote once the new commission is formed on a chair and vice chair. An overview of the NAP activities from city staff, especially focusing on invasive species management. So are there any other suggestions for agenda items for May? I don't hear or see anything. So, so the next scheduled meeting would be May 25th, 2023 at our usual time, Thursday at 7 p.m. This starts the next item on the agenda is the second public comment period. If So this is another opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes. Please call 1-877-853-5247 and enter meeting ID 922-9696-1644. This information is also displayed on the meeting agenda and video feed. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand one by one using the last 3 digits of your phone number. In order to electronically raise your hand to indicate your desire to speak, please press *9 on your phone. You will hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any television and background sounds so that we may hear you clearly. Please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments and be patient. There can be a delay of up to 30 seconds before a connection is established. So again, press *9 on your phone if you wish to speak. Is there anybody on the line yet, Sean?
We do not have anyone on the line.
Okay. Well, let's wait 30 seconds just to be sure. And then we'll adjourn the meeting. And I'm sorry it went past 9 o'clock, but I think it's been a very good meeting anyway. And I'm relieved that it did go till 10:14. Like last time. Oh. Let's see, is there anybody there yet, John?
There is not.
Okay, well, I declare this meeting adjourned at 9:24 p.m. Thanks, everybody.